The station was built to feel cold on purpose. Its walls were smooth metal, pale and clean, without marks or color. Lights stayed bright at all hours. Never warm, never dim. The air was carefully balanced for efficiency, not comfort. Sound carried strangely, footsteps echoing too far, voices sounding thin and distant. This was how the Krell Dominion liked it. Order without softness, work without emotion. Lyra had lived her entire life inside places like this. She was small compared to most Krell, with thin arms and pale blue skin that showed faint lines from years of labor. Her eyes were large and dark, trained to stay lowered. She wore the simple gray uniform of a domestic worker, with no markings, no name tag, and no rank. In the Dominion, workers did not need names, they only needed tasks. Lyra's task today was different. She stood outside a sealed door in the diplomatic wing, holding a tray with nutrient drink and processed food. The door belonged to the newly arrived human ambassador. Humans were strange. Everyone knew this. They were loud. They showed their faces openly. They used their hands when they spoke. They smiled without reason. The overseers warned the workers not to look at them too long, not to listen too closely, and never to speak unless spoken to. Lyra had cleaned many quarters before. Most diplomats ignored her. Some shouted. Some complained that the room was not perfect even when it was. Punishment for mistakes was common. She expected the same. She pressed the entry signal and waited. The door slid open with a soft sound. Inside, the room was different. It still had metal walls, but there were colors added. Fabric hung near the sleeping area. Small objects rested on shelves, each one clearly chosen. The lighting was dimmer, warmer, almost golden. The air felt softer somehow, like it moved slower. A human stood near the table. He was tall, with dark hair and skin marked by small lines near his eyes. He wore a simple uniform, not decorated like the other diplomats. When he saw Lyra, he did not turn away. He looked directly at her face. "Hello," he said. Lyra froze. He was speaking to her. She stepped forward quickly, lowering her eyes. "Delivery," she said, using the short worker language she had been taught. The human smiled. "Thank you. You must be Lyra, right?" Her hands shook. He knew her name. "Yes," she answered quietly. "Well, thank you, Lyra," he said again. "You can put it there." She placed the tray on the table carefully. Her fingers slipped slightly, and one of the containers tipped, spilling a little liquid onto the surface. Her chest tightened. Mistakes meant reports. Reports meant punishment. "I will clean," she said quickly, reaching for a cloth. Before she could move, the human stepped closer. He picked up the container and set it upright. "It's okay," he said calmly. "No harm done." Lyra stared at his hands. They were steady. No anger. No signal for guards. He handed her a cloth anyway, but not as an order. As help. "You don't have to rush," he said. "Take your time." Something strange happened then. Lyra felt heat rise inside her chest, like warmth spreading through cold metal. Her breath caught. She did not understand why her eyes felt heavy. She cleaned the table, slower now, confused by the way her body felt. When she finished, she stepped back and waited for dismissal. Instead, the human asked, "How long have you been working today?" Lyra hesitated. Workers were not asked questions. 6 cycles, she answered. "That's a long time," he said. "Do you get a rest period soon?" "I do not know," she said honestly. He frowned, a small line forming between his eyes. "You should." He reached into a storage unit and took out a small, wrapped item. "Here," he said, holding it out. "It's sweet. You don't have to eat it now." Lyra did not move. Accepting gifts was not allowed. He seemed to notice her fear. "It's all right," he said gently. "No one is watching." Her hand moved before her mind agreed. She took the item. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded. "Thank you for your work, Lyra." She left the room on unsteady legs. The hallway felt colder than before. Lyra walked back through the service corridors, her steps slower than usual. Other workers passed her without looking. Machines hummed. Orders flashed on wall panels, but inside her chest, something had changed. She finished her shift in silence. When she returned to her sleeping unit, a small metal pod shared with 3 others, she sat on her narrow rest slab and unwrapped the item. It was small, soft, sweet. She tasted it carefully. Her eyes widened. It was warm, not in temperature, but in feeling. It reminded her of nothing she had ever known. And yet it felt familiar, like something she had been missing without knowing it. That night, Lyra did not sleep. She kept thinking of the human's voice, the way he said her name, the way he looked at her like she existed. The next day, she was assigned again to the diplomatic wing. Her chest tightened with something that felt like fear and hope together. When she entered the human's quarters, he was sitting at the table, reading from a glowing screen. He looked up and smiled again. "Good morning, Lyra." "Good morning," she replied, the words strange but not unpleasant. As she cleaned, he spoke to her, not constantly, but kindly. He asked where she was from. She told him the sector number. Because she did not have a home name, he listened. No one had ever listened. When she finished, he said, "Please make sure you eat today." She nodded, unable to speak. Over the following cycles, the pattern continued. Small things, simple words. "Thank you. Please. Are you all right?" Each time, the warmth returned. Each time, it grew stronger. Lyra began noticing things she had ignored before. How other workers avoided eye contact. How overseers spoke only in commands. How silence filled the station like a heavy fog. She also noticed the humans. They laughed together in common areas. They shared food. They argued, but then apologized. They touched each other's shoulders in comfort. They noticed when someone was missing. The warmth she felt was not weakness. It was connection. One cycle, an overseer stopped Lyra in the corridor. "You are assigned too frequently to human quarters," the overseer said. "Your behavior metrics show irregular emotional response." Lyra lowered her eyes. "I will correct," she said. But inside, fear twisted with something new. She did not want to correct it. That evening, as she cleaned the human's room, her hands shook. He noticed. "Hey," he said softly. "Are you okay?" She almost lied. That was what workers did. Instead, she said, "I am afraid." He did not demand explanation. He did not raise his voice. "I'm sorry," he said. "Do you want to sit for a moment?" Workers were not allowed to sit. She shook her head, panic rising. He stepped back. "All right, but just know, you're not invisible here." Invisible. The word echoed inside her long after she left. That night, Lyra lay awake again, staring at the metal ceiling. Her life had not changed in structure. She was still a maid, still owned by the system, still small, but something inside her had awakened. She now knew what it felt like to be treated as a person, and knowing that made the cold harder to bear. For the first time in her life, Lyra wanted something more. Not power, not escape, just that warmth. And once felt, it could not be forgotten. The warmth did not fade. That was the first thing Lyra noticed. She had expected it to disappear after a cycle or two, like a strange illness or a passing dream. Feelings were not meant to last. In the Dominion, emotions were trained out of workers from early age. Calm obedience was survival, but this warmth stayed with her. As Lyra moved through the service corridors, carrying cleaning tools and supply packs, she felt it like a small light inside her chest. Sometimes it was faint, sometimes it grew stronger, especially when she passed near the diplomatic wing where the humans stayed. She tried to hide it. Her face remained neutral. Her eyes stayed lowered. Her steps stayed quiet. But inside, her thoughts were changing. She began to notice how tired the other workers looked. How one of them limped slightly but never slowed. How another worker had a cracked hand covering, but no replacement was given. Before, Lyra would have seen these things and felt nothing. Now, they bothered her. One cycle, while cleaning a storage area, she saw a worker drop a heavy container. It spilled across the floor. The worker froze in fear. Without thinking, Lyra stepped forward and helped gather the pieces. The worker stared at her. "Why?" they whispered. Had time, Lyra said, unsure of her own answer. The worker nodded slowly, confused but grateful. That night, Lyra realized her behavior had changed, and change was dangerous. In the human quarters, the ambassador continued his small kindnesses. He never spoke loudly. He never treated her like a tool. Sometimes he offered extra water. Sometimes he asked her opinion on how to arrange objects in the room. Opinions. Lyra had never been asked for one. One day, as she adjusted the lighting, she paused. "This light is too bright," she said without thinking. The human looked surprised, then smiled. He adjusted the setting. "You're right," he said. "That's better." Her chest warmed again. But she also noticed other things. Human presence affected the station. In shared halls, human voices carried laughter. In dining areas, humans invited non-humans to sit with them. They asked names. They remembered them. Even guards seemed less rigid around them. The overseers noticed too. Reports were filed. Data was reviewed. Productivity had not dropped. But behavior patterns were shifting. Emotional indicators were rising in lower castes exposed to humans. The word used was contamination. Lyra was summoned to an evaluation chamber. The room was empty except for a single chair and a tall overseer. The walls glowed white, too bright, designed to reveal every movement. "You have been observed displaying irregular responses," the overseer said. "Explain." Lyra stood straight. "I complete all tasks." That was not the question. She swallowed. "I interact with humans. Humans are emotionally unstable," the overseer said. "Exposure leads to inefficiency." Lyra thought of the warmth, of being seen, of being called by name. "I am not inefficient," she said quietly. The overseer studied her. "You will be reassigned." Her breath caught. "Effective immediately," the overseer continued. "You will no longer serve in the diplomatic wing." The floor seemed to tilt. "Yes," Lyra said, because that was all she was allowed to say. She left the chamber feeling hollow. Her new assignment was in waste processing, far from the humans. The air was heavier. The lights harsher. No colors. No voices. The warmth inside her dimmed. It did not disappear, but now it hurt. She missed the human's calm voice. She missed the way time slowed in his presence. She missed feeling like she mattered, even for a moment. During rest cycle, Lyra sat alone, holding the small wrapper from the sweet he had once given her. She had kept it hidden, a forbidden object. She traced its edges carefully. She wondered if he noticed she was gone. In the diplomatic wing, the human ambassador did notice. He asked about Lyra on the second cycle. He was told workers were rotated for efficiency. He asked again. The answer did not change. But humans were not known for accepting answers that felt wrong. He began watching more closely. He spoke with technicians, guards, even lower staff. He noticed fear in their voices when certain topics came up. He noticed how workers avoided eye contact when overseers passed. The pieces began to form a picture. Meanwhile, Lyra struggled. In waste processing, mistakes were punished quickly. One cycle, a younger worker froze when a machine malfunctioned. Alarms sounded. Overseers rushed in. Before thinking, Lyra pulled the worker back, away from danger. The overseer shouted, "Return to position!" The machine sparked, then shut down. Silence followed. Lyra stood frozen, waiting for punishment. Instead, the overseer stared at the data display. "Damage prevented," they said slowly. They turned to Lyra. "This behavior will be noted." It was not praise, but it was not punishment either. That night, the younger worker whispered, "Thank you." The words settled deep in Lyra's chest. The warmth flickered back to life. Across the station, similar moments were happening. Workers who had seen humans help each other were now helping in small ways themselves, sharing tools, warning of dangers, covering for one another. The overseers increased monitoring. The humans increased questions. The tension grew, quiet, but sharp. One cycle, as Lyra moved through a maintenance corridor, she saw the human ambassador speaking with a group of guards. His posture was calm, but his voice was firm. "You cannot treat thinking beings like this," he said. "This is not your concern," a guard replied. "It is," the human said simply. "Because you invited us here." Lyra passed quickly, heart pounding. That night, an announcement echoed through the station. Due to ongoing evaluations, all lower caste workers are restricted from human contact until further notice. Fear spread like cold water. Lyra sat on her rest slab, hands shaking. The warmth inside her pulsed weakly, like a dying light. She realized something then. The warmth was not just comfort, it was choice, and choice was dangerous. The next cycle, Lyra made a decision she had never made before. She broke protocol. Using an old service terminal, she sent a short message through maintenance channels. It was risky. It was traceable. But she remembered the human's words. "You are not invisible here." The message was simple. They are watching the workers. The kindness is being punished. "Be careful." She sent it. Her heart raced. Fear flooded her. But beneath it, the warmth burned bright. For the first time, Lyra was not just feeling something. She was acting on it, and she knew there would be consequences. The consequences came quietly, at first. Lyra expected alarms, guards, or immediate punishment after she sent the message. None came. The station continued its steady hum. Lights stayed bright. Orders continued to scroll across wall panels, but the air felt heavier. She sensed it in the way overseers watched longer, in the way guards paused when workers passed, in the way service terminals were checked more often. Her message had been received. In the diplomatic wing, the human ambassador read the warning in silence. He did not show it to anyone immediately. He only closed his eyes for a long moment, then let out a slow breath. "They're afraid," he said to himself, "not of humans, of change." He began preparing. Humans were careful like that. They did not rush into danger loudly. They gathered information. They talked. They recorded. They waited for the right moment. Lyra, meanwhile, felt the cold growing stronger. Workers were being separated. Rest cycles shortened. Conversations discouraged. Any sign of hesitation or cooperation was marked as inefficiency. Yet something strange was happening. Despite the pressure, workers were not returning to how they were before. They whispered now. They exchanged looks. They helped each other in small ways that were hard to punish. A tool left behind. A warning tapped into a wall panel. A silent step closer during inspections. The warmth had spread. And once spread, it could not be easily erased. Lyra became careful, but she did not stop. In waste processing, she showed new workers how to avoid dangerous zones. In corridors, she slowed her pace so others could keep up. She listened when someone spoke, even if it cost her time. Each act was small. Together, they were dangerous. One cycle, Lyra was summoned again. This time, it was not an evaluation chamber. It was a public space. Workers were ordered to gather in a wide service hall. Overseers stood at the front, tall and silent. Guards lined the walls. Lyra felt fear tighten around her chest. She knew what this was. A warning. The lead overseer stepped forward. "Emotional deviation threatens stability," they announced. "Correction will be demonstrated." A guard moved toward Lyra. Her breath stopped. She did not know how they knew. She only knew they did. She was pulled forward and made to stand alone under the bright lights. Every worker watched in silence. No one dared look away. "You have displayed repeated unauthorized behaviors," the overseer said. "Explain." Lyra's hands shook. Her instincts screamed at her to submit, to apologize, to say anything to make it stop. But then she remembered the warmth, the name spoken kindly, the word invisible. "I helped others," she said softly. The overseer tilted their head. "That was not required." "No," Lyra said. Her voice trembled, but she continued. "But it was right." A ripple passed through the crowd. Tiny, almost unseen. The overseer raised a hand. Before it could fall, a new voice cut through the hall. "Stop." Everyone turned. The human ambassador stepped forward, flanked by other humans and several non-human diplomats. Cameras hovered in the air, recording everything. "This individual is under diplomatic observation." the human said calmly. Any harm to her will be considered a violation of interstellar conduct. The overseer stiffened. This is internal matter. It stopped being internal when you invited the galaxy into your station, the human replied. He gestured slightly. The recordings activated. Screens across the hall lit up, showing footage. Workers being punished. Children trained into silence. Emotional suppression protocols. Lyra recognized places. Faces. Truth. Displayed clearly. Gasps spread among the diplomats. Whispers followed. Some turned away. Others stared. Shocked, the overseer's voice sharpened. This is manipulation. This is reality, the human said. And it ends now. The guards hesitated. They had orders, but they also had eyes. The station fell into chaos. Not loud, but heavy. Diplomatic channels opened rapidly. Messages flew across networks. The story spread beyond the station. Beyond the Dominion. Across the galaxy. Lyra stood frozen as hands released her arms. She did not feel brave. She felt terrified. But when she looked into the crowd, she saw something she had never seen before. Hope. The overseers retreated to confer. The guards lowered their weapons slightly. The moment stretched, fragile and dangerous. The human ambassador stepped closer to Lyra. You did good, he said quietly. I was afraid, she whispered. He nodded. So were we. That's how you know it matters. Negotiations followed. Long, tense, and watched by many. The Dominion was given a choice. Reform the caste system. Recognize worker autonomy. Or face isolation, sanctions, and loss of standing. The Dominion had always believed itself strong. But strength meant little when exposed to the light. Days passed. Lyra was kept under protection. No longer a maid. No longer a tool. She was confused by freedom. Unsure where to stand. Unsure when to speak. Humans helped without forcing, they explained. They waited. They respected her fear. The station changed. Not fully. Not easily. But enough. Workers were given rest cycles. Names were recorded. Punishments were reviewed. Overseers were replaced or retrained. The warmth spread openly now. One evening, Lyra stood near a wide window, looking out at the stars. She had never been allowed near such places before. The human ambassador stood beside her, silent. I don't know what I am now, she said. He smiled gently. You're someone who chose. She thought about that. Choice. It was still frightening. But it no longer felt impossible. Somewhere deep inside, the warmth settled, steady and strong. It was no longer something she chased. It was something she carried. And the galaxy had noticed. Change did not arrive like a storm. It arrived like morning light. Slow. Quiet. Impossible to stop once it began. After the broadcast and the negotiations, the station did not suddenly become kind. Walls were still metal. Lights were still bright. Orders still existed. But something important was different. People were watching. Not just humans. Not just diplomats. The galaxy was watching. The Dominion announced reforms, carefully worded, controlled, but real enough to matter. Worker castes were reclassified as citizens under protection. Emotional suppression protocols were suspended for review. Education programs were introduced, though tightly supervised. For the first time in her life, Lyra was not given a task at the start of a cycle. She sat in a quiet room with a window and waited. Waiting felt strange when it was not forced. A human aide arrived later and spoke gently. You're free to choose what you want to do today. The words felt unreal. Choose. Lyra's hands rested in her lap. I don't know how, she said honestly. That's okay, the aide replied. No one expects you to know yet. They left her with food, warm and simple, and a small device with access to learning programs. No orders, no time limit. Lyra stared at it for a long time before touching it. Fear still lived inside her. Freedom was not comfort. It was wide and unknown. But the warmth was there too, steady. In the cycles that followed, Lyra learned slowly. She learned words she had never needed before. Words like rest, opinion, future. She learned that her people had stories before the Dominion removed them. She learned that emotions were not errors, but signals. Sometimes the learning hurt. She cried without understanding why. She felt anger rise suddenly, sharp and confusing. Humans explained that this was normal. That feelings came in waves. They did not try to stop them. They stayed. The station continued to change around her. Some overseers resisted. Some left. Some stayed and learned, awkward and stiff. Guards began addressing workers by name. Small mistakes were corrected without punishment. Not everyone was happy. Change never pleased everyone, but it held. Lyra began helping in a new way. Not as a maid, as a listener. Other former workers came to her, confused and afraid like she had been. She listened to them. She told them they were not broken. She shared her own fear, her own uncertainty. They listened back. The warmth moved between them. One day, the human ambassador prepared to leave the station. His work there was done. At least for now. Lyra felt a tightness in her chest when she heard. She found him near the docking area, watching ships move through the void. "You're going," she said. "Yes," he replied. "Others will stay. The work continues." She nodded. "Thank you." He smiled. "You did the hard part." She shook her head. "I only felt something." "That's where it starts," he said. Before he left, he gave her something small. Not a gift of value. A simple badge with a symbol of shared contact. "For when you're ready," he said. She held it carefully. After the humans departed, the station felt quieter, but not empty. Months passed. Reforms spread beyond the station to other Dominion holdings, slowly and unevenly. Some places resisted more than others. Some failed, but the idea had escaped. That was enough. Lyra chose a new path. She trained as a cultural liaison, helping humans and Dominion citizens understand one another. She struggled at first. Speaking openly was hard. Standing before others made her legs shake, but each time, she remembered the first warmth, the first kindness. She learned to breathe through fear. Years later, Lyra stood on a world with open sky. It was a human settlement, built near the edge of shared space. The air was warm. The ground was soft beneath her feet. Wind moved freely, touching her skin. She still noticed small things like that. A child ran past her, laughing, chasing a small floating toy. The child stopped and looked at her with open curiosity. "Hello," the child said. "Hello," Lyra replied. The child smiled and waved before running off again. Lyra felt the warmth bloom, gentle and full. Nearby, humans and non-humans sat together, sharing food and stories. No one commanded her to join. Someone simply made space. She sat. As the sun lowered, coloring the sky, Lyra thought about who she had been. A maid without a name, invisible. She thought about who she was now. A being who chose kindness even when it was dangerous. The warmth she had once searched for was no longer something given to her. It lived inside her, and wherever she went, it followed. The galaxy did not change because humans were the strongest. It changed because they refused to be cold, and because one alien maid felt that warmth once, and chose to seek it again, and then chose to share it.